Western civilization is moving closer to a point of irreconcilable, unstable equilibrium, as frighteningly increasing numbers of people trust nothing. Media, academia, and especially the governments are no longer held in high esteem. Regaining trust is often impossible after betrayal. However, transparency is essential to any healing process, and that is the essence of the Don Sullivan Show. Please listen to the team explore, probe, and debate cutting-edge science, technology, and computing. Play ball!
Welcome to the Don Sullivan Show, part 2 of our series on green IT and the bottom line, how sustainability pays off with Mark Bradley of Flexera. But before we dive in, as always, we want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by License Fortress, the industry's first and only software asset management firm to offer both a financial and legal guarantee at its highest level of service. Whether it's Oracle, Microsoft, or VMware, License Fortress helps organizations stay compliant, avoid audits, and save money. Learn more at licensefortress.com. And please support our producer by visiting axtinc.com. That's AXTINK.com. Subscribe to his YouTube channel and help support his efforts to create humorous animation and get a once-in-a-lifetime shot at the Boxing Heavyweight Championship after practicing on cow carcasses in a Philly meat plant. That Bill, I tell you. Anyway, folks, we're going to dive in now and hope you enjoy.
Well, welcome back, everyone. This is not just a secondary segment in which I digressed and had to stop because I was losing breath climbing up some mountain somewhere. This is a full second part for this amazing discussion on sustainability and how sustainability can be profitable with Mark Bradley. And Steve is still here, although we lost him for a minute. Say hello, Steve. Let everybody know you're still here.
I'm still here. Yeah, I don't know.
Didn't get lost.
Hi,
Steve, how can I climb mountains in Africa and not get lost? And you get lost sitting in New Jersey.
Well, I don't have those. Are they Sherpas in South Africa or porters or what's the deal?
They were porters, and there were many of them, and they earned the incredible salaries, as I said, of between $4 and $10 a day. I was very impressed.
I don't have those here to assist me with this ascending these computer issues. So that's what I'm going to blame it on.
Okay, well, I'll take that. All right, Mark, we're back, and we'll stop being silly here because I want to get right back into this fascinating discussion. And what I'd love to start this part B with is talking about Flexera a little bit more, because you mentioned right at the beginning, Flexera seemed to be uniquely positioned, effectively a leader in a cottage industry. And how is it that a cottage industry can develop in the United States these days, in which everything is so incredibly polarized, and that the knee-jerk reaction to everybody, as I mentioned before, knee-jerk reaction not from everyone, but from a great majority of people, certainly your average CNN versus Fox News viewer, to not get too political, is going to be, that green stuff, or those conservatives just want to see the planet burn. And how is it that Flexera did this? And why is Flexera so uniquely positioned? And is this industry growing?
Very good questions. So I would start with any time you're in the software business, as you were, it starts with a customer challenge and what is it that I can solve for them? And is it worth paying for? There's a lot of challenges we can solve that they're not willing to pay for. But as the regulations were evolving and it became more and more time consuming, there was data that was needed from IT. So when companies first go through let's say the CSRD, and the information it's gathered, ESG, it's global, it's about resources, it's about location, it's about how you manage your business. And I think early on, one of the positives of ESG was many companies were doing great things. They were having employees taking a day and paint a house or raise money for different funds. And amongst the company, that was great. And amongst its current customers, that was great. But now ESG wants you to flag that. and capture that. As you start to go through it and you get all the basics done and you do what we call like a baseline, let's say, of your carbon, employee commuting, travel that the company does, and based on some spend, they do some calculations. When you fast forward and you start to dig in a little bit, you start to ask, why are my IT numbers so high? And because my IT numbers are so high, there's a carbon factor to it. And when you double click on that, that's where Flexera comes in. Flexera comes in because we understand your entire estate. We understand all the devices, all the way from a mobile phone, through your laptops, through your data centers, servers, routers, switches, all the way up to the cloud. There's a lot of infrastructure there. There's a lot of devices there, as well as a lot of services. And so if you can just put a green lens on it and start to look at and manage it more, and this is where I talk about carbon, treating carbon like cash. When you can manage it, budget, and forecast it, and you can start to really see the visibility, there's lands of opportunity. And that's where I think Flexera uniquely was positioned, because we had 90% of the data. We just needed that final couple calculations. And then once we had that visibility, now we have another lens by which to manage your infrastructure with. And that visibility is now what's driving that additional carbon savings, water savings, electricity savings. We talked about, in Africa, to be able to forecast your electricity so that the electric company knows how to manage it. When you start to fill out your CSRD, in addition to your current position, they ask, what's your forecast? I don't know, until you have some sort of technology to help you with that. And so that's the moment that, and I would say that's the intersection where we found ourselves quickly as we were helping customers around the world, help them see it, manage it, and then, of course, forecast it. And then as they go back and they feed other systems, that Uber systems like Watershed, IBM and Visi, that capture across the full ESG. And we found our sweet spot to help contribute to that.
So is it mostly about avoiding waste, or is there more than that?
I would say there's more to it than that. I think the one of the original key drivers is regulation, whereas forcing companies to look at it. But there are also companies that we've worked with that truly want to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing by the planet. They know what they're doing needs to be understood, and they've worked with us to at least address the IT aspects of it. And what's interesting is the industry that we've worked at multiple. We have customers in all the different pillars, but the one that's been the most interesting is the manufacturing industry, because they know how much carbon's produced to manufacture, and they're looking for areas around to help reduce so that they can still maintain the manufacturing pace. And if they can reduce carbon in other areas, when they stroke that check for the offset, there's room. The other part that's been interesting is we've talked to companies where they said, in the fourth quarter, towards the end, we stopped travel, not because of money, because of carbon. Our carbon budgets were out of whack, and we had to stop all the travel so that we didn't incur that carbon. And then there's others that, when you take a plane ride, you can contribute to offset. That's another way that companies have done that. But it's that insight, that availability, that large soda company, we worked with them, and we showed some significant savings in a couple of data centers that they had spun up. And we brought to their attention that if you looked at stack ranked all the data centers, the two that you chose, they're at the bottom. Mm-hmm. You might want to consider moving them back up, because they're running on pure coal, or whatever the scenario was.
That's where I wanted to get to.
Sure.
How do they distinguish, especially when power is put on one of three grids in the United States, right? East, West, and Texas. Mm-hmm. How do they really distinguish, or is this just an estimate? What
so that's
carbon really equivalent is being used?
Mm-hmm. So You're hitting it right on the topic, right on the hard nose. The hard deck is as our CEO would say. Let's get to the hard deck. So we're at the hard deck. When we talk about the grid, we're talking about the hard deck. And you look across the United States, and you're right. There's only so many grids that we have access to spin up our data centers. And if you look around the world, there's different countries have different methods by which they produce their electricity and make that available. And there are sites that are dedicated to monitoring the grid. And it came from the electric industry, and it's brought over into the sustainability industry. And so working with our friends at Green Pixie, what we did was they're doing the math that look at it from the grid down and then from the skew up. And so what they're able to do is they're able to do that math. So we have that we provide our customers a stack rank of AWS, Azure, and Google from the top all the way down to the least. And we know it because of the grids. We know it because of the power user efficiency. There's enough information available about the location of that data center, the water that's available at that data center, the grid that it's on, and how they're managed. And that goes into the calculations by which we generate their reports for.
That's interesting.
To help give them that.
Question mark. So
Sure.
if you're a company and you're purchasing a certain capacity out of, AWS or Azure, that counts towards your carbon footprint, correct? That was my understanding.
Correct. Scope 3. Yep.
How does that work for AWS, for example? Does their carbon footprint count as all the data centers they have, or is that is that a different calculation?
No, that's a really good question. So SaaS providers have this same challenge. So Salesforce, anyone who sells a SaaS-based solution, one of the requirements of doing business now is I need to show you, Mr. Customer, how much carbon we had to generate to do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so with your application essentially sits on our infrastructure. You have X amount of data. You have X amount of utilization for the tasks that you're triggering. You have some workflows. We have to figure out what your carbon is, and we have to be fair about it.
Yeah.
And essentially, and that's one method we have. And I think when you treat carbon like cash, you can do that.
Yeah. So, what you were talking about before, it sounded like you can basically, you have a list, these data centers are kind of more efficient, I guess carbon high versus carbon low. You basically have a list of those. So companies obviously can also decide, all right, well, we're going to go with this company, this provider, because this won't affect our carbon footprint quite as much.
Correct.
Well, and one of the things I'll tell you, Steve, Mark, is that virtually every company that we ever worked with in the days of the VMware cloud was absolutely committed to whichever hyperscaler they were already working with. And it was really hard to get them to change their mind.
Yeah.
So
it's really interesting. So does I'm assuming you get a certain amount of the carbon credits or whatever. Can you explain real quickly for folks that don't know, myself included, how that works? Sure. If you're a huge company, do you get more credits to play with versus others, or what are the limits? How does it usually work?
Sure. So admittedly, I'm not a deep expertise in it. All I understand is that there's a carbon accounting methodology by which when you're a large company and airline industry, you have to fly that plane. And that's your core business. And every time that flight goes in the air, the distance it goes, how much carbon it's producing. And as a company, there's some regulations that you have to address. But then there's also internal mission statements, employee engagements, a number of reasons of why you want to address it and not ignore it.
Yeah.
And so there's an industry that's available, and there's if you want to do a whole episode on that, there's a lot of debates about efficiency and the effectiveness.
Yeah, I'm curious about how it all works. And you can swap or buy credits from other. Is it true that you can buy other credits?
Yeah, so, at first glance, I'm going to say this. At first glance, this seems like what happens when a medieval indulgences meet a 20th century pyramid scheme. But you're going to tell me it's a lot more than that, and I'm going to listen to it.
It's fascinating.
So you'll hear the terms, tree farms, solar farms, windmill farms, and essentially the money that comes in, what they'll do is exactly what they committed to. And then they'll show you, okay, we planted these, in this field that was paid for by you. And there it is. Now, I always wondered, do they take that same picture and give it to 10 people?
Is it more PR than, reality?
There goes the 20th century pyramid scheme.
Yeah, I don't know any of that. I don't want to challenge any of that, but I'm just saying.
I know Schwarzenegger was really into this for a long time, and he would be out there showing off planting the little redwood trees, and so
I just planted a new redwood. Look at this.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'll be back 200 years from now to see it bigger than me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay, we're getting silly here.
Yeah.
Very important subject.
Yeah, no. It's a fine line. And like I said, I'm not an expert. I just understand that there are checks that are written. There are organizations that accept them, and there are people trying to do the right thing with that money.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And that, and the goal is to try and offset, if I produce X amount of millions of tons, I want to be able to offset it by planting X amount of trees that will offset that and that strike a balance.
Is it just trees?
No, it's trees. It's solar farms. There's a whole industry. Yeah, all by itself, and you can pick and choose peanut butter spread, whatever it is you want to do. Again, I'm not the expert in that one. I just see it peripherally as it connects from customers we've worked with.
Gotcha. So you can buy credits, but you can also do things to reduce or offset. And that's when you were talking about the tree farms. That would be kind of an offset.
Correct.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And those trainings that we were having fun with in the beginning from Green Pixie, they really get into sections of that and walk you through the how it's calculated on grid, off grid. There's a series of methods. I probably should have ramped up and had a slide ready for that topic, but they do get into that quite a bit in the first course that they offer.
Actually, we may need to have a whole episode specifically on those methodologies of how to actually calculate and utilize what carbon credits really mean. And I'll try to keep my quips to myself, but no guarantees. I would like to shift a little bit here because I want to go back to a subject that we touched on but really didn't finish on, and it's something that's really important to me. I'm very into the material science, and as we talked about with, I think it's Hyperic that Mohan is with, and what they were using to capture the heat. Absolutely amazing stuff. And we're going to have him on pretty soon to update us. It's been 6 months. What else is out there that is a product that can actually itself be purchased, applied, implemented, that can result in either the savings of carbon? I mean, we'll get into the carbon capture discussion, but the savings of heat so that it's just not dissipated enough. Like, for instance, one of the things that drives me crazy, and this is where Musk and I part, that solar panels he lies. I shouldn't say lies because it's a little bit too strong, but he claims solar panels can capture and transmit about 22% of incident solar energy into electricity. From what I've seen, it's more like 15 to 18.
They always overstate, and then I
know. So I think that's BS. But the point is, it's something, and it works, but it's relatively minimal. And is there more of this coming along, or are there better products than even just solar panels, which are very, very difficult, and they're incredibly it's very, very difficult to recycle them. It's very difficult to build them. Of course, the rare earth minerals that really aren't rare, we really just don't want to mine them in the United States or in Europe. So we pay 14-year-olds in the Congo $1 a day to dig through the dirt with their hands, right? So it's that kind of thing.
So Don, you're going to like this. We talked a little about the Green I/O show. So I attended that.
Oh,
There was a presentation that really shocked me. It was this two guys startup in Europe. And what they came up with was, imagine your hot water heater. You have the full tank. You don't have the individual one. Imagine buying a computer that's designed with the GPU chips hooked up to your water heater and then a cable back to the data center. And so now every time they needed to run AI, they're running it on your water heater, which is warming up your water to take a hot shower.
Yeah, that's good. So you're sharing everything that has heat being generated back into the grid. Just total pervasive, ubiquitous sharing.
Yes.
Potentially.
I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
That is kind of cool.
Yeah. And then the other one was a city that designed itself in such a way that the city itself would provide hot water. So they had a huge, water tower of hot water, and that water was warmed based on the data center. So you, as a citizen of this city, of this community, turn on hot water, and it came from the tank that the data center warmed.
Data center showers that's the name of this particular episode. Part 2, data center shower.
There you go. Data center. Oh, coin it, lock it. I think you got a pat
or put a hot tub up there, baby. That's pretty nice.
I mean, Texas, they dumped it into the main water. Why don't they feed it to let their citizens use it?
Yeah. Well, right. They don't have any rules, and like I said, boiling the fish and.
Yeah,
it was the fishermen there that downstream from 10 to 100 miles that noticed the fish were actually half cooked.
Perhaps this is a stupid question, but what about just putting them places that are really cold?
There is some of that.
Or is that harder to actually do? Then you have an opposite problem.
You've seen Microsoft put data centers underwater.
Yeah.
You've seen that. We've seen, where they have put it into warm regions and then just let the cold air outside run through to keep it chilled. There is some of that. I think the other part is the infrastructure to get the data out of that data center into the mainland. I think that's one aspect.
Well, and you want it somewhere close, I'm assuming. You don't want to put it up in the Arctic, and then you're melting stuff up there, and you have
I'm raising grizzly bears and our polar bears.
If we invade Greenland, we can just put all the data centers there. Isn't it pretty icy over there? Problem solved.
And there's a lot of space, man, with 55,000 people.
Yeah, there you go.
Big as Alaska.
We could offer them jobs. They could tend to the data center. The big,
I'm
coming up with all sorts of good ideas for you, Don.
That's right. Just free flow of thinking. There's even more to this, though.
Sure.
One of the things that is sort of interesting in the economics of humanity is that for how long, 5,000 years, the economies of the world have been primarily based on gold, even now. And it's an interesting problem because the entire amount of gold on Earth is less than half the actual mass of the Washington Monument. And it doesn't come close to other elements that are on the periodic table. And in reality, they should be somewhat linear in terms of the actual distribution. And part of that is that gold is heavy, of course, and it sinks. And when the Earth was formed, it sunk. And for the most part, the deepest functional holes that mining companies or oil companies have ever drilled to about 4 miles. The Russians have gotten down to about 7 miles.
Yeah, they have
the Earth's crust is
huge
the Earth's
hole,
crust. The Earth's crust is about 30. Right, it's a huge hole. The Earth's crust is about 30 miles. In places like Yellowstone, it's closer to 15. But when you get down to the 7 to 10 mile range, it starts developing. We start seeing a material or an Earth that is almost fluid, that is not quite plasma. But it's almost fluidly, and that's one of the reasons they can't drill any further, because the hole just keeps filling itself in if you go any further than that. And what that means, and I used a digressed point of gold, is that at some point somebody's going to find a lot of gold down there, and it's going to be make the gold on that we use on Earth economically less valuable than it was before, sort of like the diamond problem.
Or the asteroids. Aren't there some asteroids with a ton of gold?
There are asteroids that are made of nothing but gold and every other element.
You net one of those babies,
Yeah. I mean, well, there's one out there that's in the asteroid belt that it's said that if we could actually capture it, every person on Earth would be a billionaire.
But wouldn't that just reduce?
Of course, economically, it would change everything, and
it would be worth like nothing. But
I don't mean to totally digress. The point is that there are, when you look down there, the number of materials, and again, I'm really into the material science that exist, are just utterly astounding, almost like on a cosmological level. And I am really wondering what other material science has always been, in my mind, an ignored, or not ignored, but a less interesting science to students, a less focused upon science by the media or any other scientific disciplines. And I'm wondering if you know of other more obscure projects, even university projects, that have extremely high heat capacities in different kind of materials, particularly the batteries. Again, is something that drives me crazy, in that the lithium batteries we have, which have cobalt and nickel and all these quotes, air quotes, rare earth materials, which can't be recycled. They're incredibly expensive, and they can only be recharged 700 times, just like the batteries in our phone, before they become less utilized. Do you know of other things out there? Because that's where, to me, the massive profitability in sustainability is. You get better material science with better objects, like something that is biodegradable that can replace plastic. There you go, right?
Sure. Sure.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of plastic to clean up, but that can be done. I'm wondering, what else do you know? What else have you discovered in this discipline that you're in?
Sure. So it's admittedly, I haven't dug too deep into the material science, but I do recognize it when you see it. You're right on the one concern about the car batteries, for the electric cars was, one, how many charges can it get out of it? What happens when it's dead? How do you recycle it? Can you recycle it?
It's a hazmat event if you have an accident.
Yes. And then the particular, like you called out, the particular materials, the minerals that are needed. How far deep into the earth do you have to go get that material in order to produce that battery? And is it readily available? And you kind of alluded to the fact that it's available in certain areas.
I mean, there's more lithium under the Salton Sea than there is in all of the Congo, but we don't want to do that. Yeah. We'd rather get it from poor people in Africa and pay nothing for it. And I don't mean to, again, be terribly dismissive on that, but it's true. And so better materials can solve this problem.
Yeah. And I wonder, and this is just my curiosity, I have no expertise in this, but I wonder if the Ukraine involvement is because their land offers certain materials that isn't as readily available.
Sure.
The North Donbass area is enormous.
Well, it's the bread basket, a lot of wheat, but I'm sure it's more than
basically
than that.
It's Wyoming and Nebraska combined together, but 10 times the size. It's incredible.
Your talk of materials has got me looking at nanostructured black metals. Apparently, that's a new material science thing. They have been engineered.
This is something Stephen and I into even with watches too. Things like polycarbonate.
Yeah, they've been engineered at a nanometer scale, so they absorb nearly all incoming light and heat instead of reflecting it. I don't know. You could start building things out of that in the data center, maybe.
That's exactly the point. And I'm wondering where that industry is. And to me, that kind of industry deserves enormous consideration when people are talking about tax credits and so on.
Sure.
These are things that simply
should receive it,
make the world better and allow for unfathomably profitable business propositions if actually discovered properly in the same way that pharmaceuticals are.
Yes.
So
it makes you wonder if the HPEs, the manufacturers of many of this servers and equipment, if they've considered the different minerals,
options, different possibilities. Yeah. And again, it's just not a science that is the sexiest in the world. It seems to be somewhere between chemistry and geology, and it's real science, and this is science that's going to change the world. As I said, at some point, they're going to create a battery that has a heat capacity significantly greater and a deterioration rate significantly greater than the standard lithium batteries. And at that point, electric cars are going to be a lot more viable and a lot more interesting than they are now to your average car buyer, for the most part. They'll be a lot more
just don't want to sit in line at the charge station, like around town. It's fine.
They'll be able to take a much greater charge, Steve.
Yeah, they're like fighting over.
If they can take 100 times the charge that they take right now, which is what I'm talking about, then you got to plug in once a month.
Because think about your phone. Like over time, the battery starts to suck, but like you can pretty much charge
about 700 times.
You can charge it everywhere nowadays, though, even on the airplane. So it doesn't really matter. Like, so you either improve the battery
until the battery dies, and you need a new one.
Well, yeah,
but with an EV, it's $5,000.
I know, but either improve the battery or just make it so you can charge it more places. I know eventually, you're going to run out of charges.
Both things are true,
but like,
improving means both those things, right? So I think one of and we've talked about this a lot on our AI shows. I hate to use the term AI because it's really machine learning. Mm-hmm. And I will continue to say that AI was artificial intelligence is a term that's stolen from cartoons in the 1950s. And machine learning, the analytics part of it, as opposed to the replace the customer service representatives, which is a miserable failure. But the analytics part of it is incredibly successful, both from the possibilities in medicine and ability to do analytics with nanoparticles. I myself am hoping to be, we've talked about this before, Steve, I myself am hoping to be an experiment at some point. I got something growing on my spine, and I'm hoping that the nanoparticles can find and tear apart before they have to do a life-changing surgery.
This is what this is what the conspiracy community is concerned about. But I mean, it can go either way. They could be good, they could be bad.
Well, you know what? This is still all voluntary in the United States, and I'm willing to volunteer for this. But again, we digress. But my point is I believe that the machine learning itself, the analytics, can go right through into this infinite array of permutations in material science and come up with different combinations of things through chemistry that will have some type of outcome that maybe it'll take great human minds to understand what the value of that is. But we don't have it necessarily now. When you look at the fact that a single GPU can theoretically look at 1 trillion MRI pictures a second, as opposed to a radiologist who's really good looking at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 right away. we have tremendous opportunity in that regard. And I'm not really asking a question there. I'm just sort of posing what may seem to a lot of people like science fiction right now. But, the whole notion of putting together a data center that was the size of Texas Stadium 5 years ago seemed like science fiction as well.
That's true. So,
Mark, what excites you the most about all this right now? What are you really looking forward to?
It's a really good question, and I think that I've had a pretty good career. I've got a chance to do a lot of things. I've working with HP. I had almost 1 million miles of travel, and as I was digging into sustainability, both from my daughter, from the cab, and then just the general research, you get to a point in your life where you're like, it's time to give back. I mean, I've always been about giving back, but I can see I'm on the final.
You want to
laps.
make the world a better place, genuinely.
I do, but I don't want to just talk about it. I want to put my efforts, my capabilities, the knowledge, my experience. I want to put it all to work so that when I step away, people knew that I gave it my very best and I helped set the course in the right direction. I helped understand. I took very complex things and simplified it. And I set it up in such a way that as the industry evolves, you have something to work with. You're not starting from scratch. And something that if I was to retire, or if they, as they say in Moneyball, if they tell me I can't play the children's game anymore, I can look back and I can see the game playing and unfolding, knowing that I had a significant part in that, in taking advantage of the role that I have, the company I'm with, and what the industry is trying to do. And that motivates me. You interviewed Shiny a little bit earlier. She helped me do some of that inside of Flexera. Sustainability is one of those things. It's a ground up initiative, but you need to connect with executives that'll support you through the process and not squash you along the way. And she is on the executive side.
And one of the things I'll say is you've got to be very careful that the fine line does not cost too much. True. Because not only does that eventually the patience of the higher level executives and the board run thin, but then, as I have found out recently, and very unfortunately, is that it makes your company more vulnerable to a profit harvesting PE company. And then everything that you found interesting just sort of goes away to that effort. Not being disparaging, Stephen. Don't look at me like that.
No.
He knows what I'm talking about. And I'll shut up now.
No. I get it. But you asked what motivated me, what gets me excited, what I see as the potential.
Well, that's great.
Is helping.
And as you posited before, you can make money doing something positive that you actually believe in. That's a really nice combination that, a lot of people don't necessarily have.
Yes.
So, that is very positive.
Well, you look like a guy who's having fun.
I am. And in addition to working on this, I do get to work with great people, great customers, who feed off of my enthusiasm. I'll admit I probably bring a little bit more enthusiasm than your average sustainability guy. But when, I mentioned earlier, when almost 400 Flexera employees took these certification exams.
That must have been gratifying.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And they did it with pride, and they post and they like and they share, and they, it goes viral. And knowing that you have that kind of impact,
influence on the way they were thinking and the focus that they had.
Well, if you're not jazzed about it, you're not going to get other people jazzed about it if you aren't yourself. It's like if you aren't sold on something, you're not going to sell other people something. So it makes sense.
People read that real quick.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So I do want to touch on two other things that are, I'm going to tease the audience because we're going to have multiple episodes, even series on this, and it has to do with technology and not necessarily material science. But they are two things. And Mark, we may even have you back on, and we may even have, we're going to get into doing, Stephen's not totally sure about this yet, but it's going to happen. We're going to have some panels. And
I like panels. I have no issue with panels.
Sure. What do you think about the present state? And you can just, we're running short here, so you can just talk about this on a topical level, because again, we're going to have full discussions on this. To me, the ultimate in profitability of sustainability, and they are with desalinization. It just seems so ridiculous to me that the entire world is covered with 70% water and there's water problems anywhere. And the notion of carbon capture, or the technologies of carbon capture. What do you think about those two things, just on a teasing level for the audience?
Sure. So I see tremendous opportunity in desalination. I learned about it in one of my prior companies called Zurich Life, and then I got acquired and went off to Bank One and JP Morgan Chase. But I remember an employee all hands meeting where Zurich had invested in the desalination capabilities of California. And that was decades ago. And to see it move forward, and I think since then there was a data center that was put next to it to try and show that they can desalinate the water and then use that water to cool that data center. And I'm fascinated by it. I want to learn more about it. I think there's opportunity there. The argument would be it uses so much energy to desalinate that it's counterintuitive.
And my issue with that is exactly the way the world thinks about it. Now, they've kind of mastered and made that very efficient in both Israel and Saudi Arabia. And the reason it takes so damn much energy is they have to blast it through ever increasing smaller grids so that the salt can just be knocked out and into blocks of brine, which they don't know what to do with to some point. To me, just looking at nature and evaporation process combined with actually using solar energy to move it around while the evaporation process works is something that seems so simple. I just can't understand why we haven't seen more technologies based on that. But again, we're going to have entire shows on this. So that's where I'm at with it. So what about carbon capture? Do you think it's real? Do you think there's something that, what captures carbon? Trees do, right? Trees capture carbon. They're built on it.
Yeah. I'm using nature to counter nature's problem. I understand that, and the trees countering the carbon. I get that. It makes sense to me. And there's plenty of land to do that around the world. When they talk about devices
that do it, put something on top of a smokestack kind of thing.
Yeah. That's options too. In Chicago, it's popular to have gardens on roofs. They've done that for many years. But in terms of like capturing carbon and burying it in the earth, I need to learn more. I would even think from a profitability perspective, capturing it and then using it for building materials. Oh, that's an option. Yeah. Didn't know if that was capable, but that makes sense if it's...
carbon is, it's strong material. And if it's really pure, that's what, how do you make steel? You take iron, you put carbon in it.
You make these nice showers out of carbon, and the data center is the hot water.
Pure carbon can absolutely be a construction material. But it's
like carbon fiber, like they make race cars out of that stuff.
So again, we're going to have entire shows, and it didn't mean to put you on the spot with any of that.
No, I'm not the expert, but I'll play one at home.
Yeah, that's what we do all day long on the Don Sullivan Show. We don't know anything at all here, folks. We just are continuously reading Wikipedia as the show moves along.
Oh, I was just using. I was actually using an LLM to research that. Even worse. So,
tell me about your carbon habit.
I was using the AI data centers to research stuff on the AI data centers.
All right, folks. On that fun and happy note, I really want to thank Mark Bradley for joining us. Congratulate Flexera on their accomplishments in these areas. I invite anybody who would like to come on, who's listening to this show and maybe have a different perspective on it all, to please do that with me. And just reach out to me. We are going to have more of these shows. I hope Mark joins us if you haven't been turned off by our New Jersey rudeness too much. But I also do ask you, Mark, if something really interesting comes up that is new technology, new materials, please ping either one of us and we'll get you right back on the show. We plan on doing this for a long time, with a lot of episodes. The vast audience of the Don Sullivan Show continuously wants to hear me, and we're growing in leaps and bounds. Ask Bill Axe, our producer of this.
Do we have any mafioso data centers? Have they gotten into that game?
I don't know. That would have been a heck of a Sopranos episode.
Yeah, I always go down to the data center.
It's like gold, right?
Because you can see cash-intensive businesses, but I don't know.
Oh, Kevin O'Leary thinks so. So, he's...
all right. So maybe there are some folks, data centers. All right.
Time to call it an episode and for today. I want to thank you all for, again, listening. Download them all. And until next time, there's, again, one thing I want to remind you of, that no matter where I am, if I'm climbing a mountain in Africa or Colorado or going down to a canyon in Arizona, or we're talking about artificial intelligence or trying to solve the world's problems of sustainability, that remember one thing and one thing always that will make your life better. Folks, remember that all at-bats are situational.